One championship, 8 races, legendary circuits, drivers from all over the world, one family, one passion, endurance racing. Welcome to the most professional endurance racing series for all drivers, amateurs, semi-professional and professional. Welcome to the 24-hour series powered by Hankook. Can you beat the challenge of 8 endurance races? Will you become the 24-hour series champion for 2021? This is endurance.
Hankook 12 Hours of Hungary is the penultimate round of the championship and our final venue in the European segment of our tour of the world. Remember, in previous years we've actually had separate titles, but for 2021 there are points to be gleaned from not only Dubai at the start of the year, but the remaining rounds at Sebring as well. So every opportunity to try and get maximum points for this weekend. And then there is about a month's break before we cross the Atlantic for the final event. So delighted you can be with us on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. My name's Johnny Palmer, joined today by Peter Snowden and by Lucas Gajewski in the pits. We'll get to those gentlemen in just a second, but a reminder that our season began at the start of the year in January for the traditional 24 Hours of Dubai, powered by Hankook. Then, after a 2-month break, the 12 Hours of Mugello, which was a split race across Friday afternoon and all day Saturday. There was a all-in 12 Hours of Circuit Paul Ricard in April. The 12 Hours of Hockenheim again was split in May, and then the 24 Hours of Barcelona at the start of last month. We're here at Hungary after a slight change in plans, and it's been a rather fluid campaign if you've been following it. This is unusual in the sense that there are 2 hours of running today for the race and 10 hours tomorrow, so all about staying on the lead lap, you would think. And then the first ever trip for Creventic and the 24H Series to Sebring for the 24 hours across the 18th, 19th and 20th of November. So it is a beautiful day in the Hungaroring, and we will be having a look at the runners and riders in a moment or two. There have been already 2 private tests and then free practice this morning that unsurprisingly was topped by Herbert Motorsport, who won last time out at Barcelona. But to get a flavour of the entries and the mood in the camp, let's head to Lucas Gajewski, who's in the pit lane.
Yes, indeed, Johnny. Hi to everyone. It's a lovely day here at the Hungaroring in Budapest. Behind us, the pit lane with all the cars getting ready for qualifying. And that, Johnny, is one of the big differences this time out here in Hungary, because normally, as you know, in Creventic and the 24H Series, we have a split qualifying with TCE cars and GT cars. This time here in Hungary, it's a combination, and that kind of works the same as Budapest itself. And to tell you what I'm on about, let's have a look onto a map of Budapest, because as some of you might know, it's actually 2 parts. It's Buda, the older part, and Pest, the newer one. So let's call this the TCE bit, because obviously they normally would have started. And then here we have the newer GT bit. Now, because this all together is just better than 2 separate things, this all combines to one big qualifying session of 30 minutes with all the cars on the circuit, and I'm quite looking forward to this, Johnny.
Yeah, you and me both, Lucas. Thank you for that. We'll get plenty more from you over the next qualifying session, and he makes the point, quite rightly so, that last time out in Barcelona we had 2 separate divisions, but this time it will be half an hour of all of the cars that we will be seeing later on, Peter Snowden, and 16 of them were in free practice, which has actually only just finished. That was running for an hour, from 1 local through till 2:25, and now just 20 minutes later, This is a 30-minute session to get qualifying done. And then it's only an hour and 15, I make it, before we start racing. So these sessions are really coming thick and fast. Not a great deal of opportunity to change the setup.
No, morning, Johnny and Lucas. Yeah, it's interesting psychology, isn't it, of the drivers and teams behind the straightaway, because we've got, as you say, a split race, 2 hours this afternoon, 10 hours tomorrow. It's kind of almost like the similar sort of Formula One sprint format, isn't it, of do a shorter race today. So how much are people going to take risks today, because they've got 10 hours to do tomorrow in one go? Great that the qualifying is mixed, because that gets the, if you like, gets the eye in ready for later on, rather than two separate groups. You're straight out there, both groups together. I think it could be quite fascinating. I just wonder if people are going to sandbag, if you like, for want of a better phrase, today, with an eye on the big prize tomorrow of a 10-hour running.
And there's always the opportunity to gain some time back from one day into the next, because all you have to do is stay on the lead lap within your category. And even if the gap is almost a lap time, and by the way, lap time around here, a good one in GT is 1 minute 46. If you're in the TCR category, it's more like a 1:56. But let's say you're trailing your class leader in TCR by 1 minute 50 as you cross the line later on this evening. You will buy back all of that time when the clock is effectively reset. When it's the period of time when it's not reset is if you fall off that lead lap, and therefore the lap's distance is retained into tomorrow's grid. So those that are quite savvy will potentially lose some time today, but not too much, so that they can then gain best part of 2 minutes back again, and they might actually postpone a pit stop until early tomorrow rather than doing it late tonight.
Exactly, that's the whole point of the strategy thinking today, isn't it? The philosophy of what they're going to do. It is a race. Obviously, the qualifying session a little bit later on, the 30 minutes of qualifying session joined together. But what we do for tomorrow, what the drivers do, and I'm sure the teams will be watching each other down the pit lane, because the big prize is tomorrow. And that's not to say they're not going to race today, because it is a grid. Effectively, it's a 2-hour qualifying session today to set the grid for tomorrow, but always in the knowledge you've got that overnight, any repairs, anything that needs doing, and all the more reason to keep out of trouble at the first corner, as you always want to in endurance race. You want to do in racing full stop anyway.
Yeah.
But you've only got a 2-hour race today. To me, it's fascinating what they're going to see, and that will pan out certainly. And I just wonder if we'll see perhaps teams showing their hand a bit more in qualifying, but then backing off for the 2-hour race to hold it in reserve ready for the 10 hours tomorrow.
So last time out, we were racing in a very different format indeed, at 24 hours, and that was all the way through, where in Barcelona, Herbert Motorsport with their number 91 Porsche managed to complete very nearly 700 laps around the Grand Prix circuit in Barcelona, 695 after 24 hours, but they got a huge amount of points. Daniel Aleman, Ralph Bone, Alfred and Robert Renauer. Now the driver lineup is not quite the full complement for this weekend. They only have one of the Renauers, and that is, bear with me, for the 91 Porsche, Alfred Renauer, with Daniel Aleman and Ralph Bone in their 91 Porsche. Herbert also had the 92 here this weekend, which finished third in free practice a little earlier on this afternoon. And the 92, Jürgen Hering, Bobby Gonzalez, Tim Müller and Marco Seyfried. Also in the GT3 category, and this is GT3 as the top class, Ted van Vliet and Ruud Olige in the BMW M6. So outgoing cars Peter and I were commentating on last weekend during the penultimate round of the NLS around the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and the M4 of course is waiting in the wings for competition in season 2022, but we do have this JR Motorsport BMW M6 GT3 present on the grid. Exciting to see how that gets on. There's also a couple of Audis. One is the Evo spec, so one newer than the other, the 34 Car Collection Motorsport Audi of Johannes Kerkhoff, Dr. Kerkhoff no less, Gustav Edelhoff, Elmar Grimm and Max Edelhoff, so father and son Edelhoffs in that car, with then the one that's not the Evo from Rutronic Racing by TECE for Michael Doppelmayr, Pierre Kaffer, Elia Earhart and Sven Herberger. And then 2 Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo 20s, one for MP Racing for the Gosner family, Thomas, David and Karina, and CP Racing's Mercedes, Charlie Putman, Charles Espenlau, Joe Foster and Shane Lewis. So I reckon, yes, the GT3 category is the most popular, and I think we're going to have a good race there with 7 cars. Very different kind of ways of building GT3 cars as well. Some front engine, some mid-engine, the 2 Porsches rear-engined, and it's going to be fascinating to see which is better around this tight and technical circuit, Snowy.
It certainly is, and it's a slightly depleted field than we're used to, but it's still some quality names out there, some good driver lineups as well. And great to see that M6 BMW out. It is, it's probably harsh or unfair to call it an aging car now, but it is about to be replaced by the new M4, different platform altogether. For that, the replacement of that car, which we saw do so well in a last round, 5th overall, wasn't it? I think in the last round.
Yes.
Did finish 10th on its debut, its proper debut, but deliberately they ran it low fuel, and it was meant to expire on the last lap, but it actually expired on the last lap in the pit lane and didn't quite get across, and we thought it was classified 10th. But the M6 still a mighty piece of equipment in GT3 racing, and I would not be at all surprised to see it right up there at the pointy end, as they say. Big car as well, huge footprint on that. So it's going to need quite a bit of room. Thank goodness this is a Formula 1 licensed track where there's lots of room and lots of runoff.
And we desperately need, or certainly from the variety point of view, someone to break the stranglehold of this Porsche domination. Fans of Porsche will be saying, no, Johnny, we want them to win all the way through the year. Well, it has been the 911 GT3R that has been victorious in every single round. I'm talking about the GT part of the series, of course, because we will have 2 races in one later on today and tomorrow. But those that can remember all the way back to Dubai at the start of the year, that was a win for the number 36 GPX Racing Porsche of Alan Ferte, Julien Anlauer, Mathieu Jaminet, Fred Fatien and Axel Jeffries. Then the first of 3 wins for the 91 Porsche from Herbert Motorsport of Alleman, Bone, Renauer and Renauer. They went on to win the 12 hours of Paul Ricard as well. The difference between Mugello, the second round, and the 12 hours at Paul Ricard is that it was all the way through 12 hours at Ricard, whereas we broke for Friday night in Italy for the 12 hours there in Tuscany. The 66 car at Hockenheimring is the Hegeli Racing Porsche of Peter de Curtins, Manuel Lauck and Mark Basseng that took victory in Germany. And as I mentioned, in Spain last time out, it was the 3rd win of the season for Alleman, Bone, Renauer and Renauer in Porsche number 91. So are we going to get perhaps a car that's not a Porsche win this weekend at Hungaroring? You're going to have to wait a little over 24 hours to find out the answer to that question, as we can get some more from Lucas, who's viewing this session in the pits.
Johnny, you just mentioned the BMW M6. This is their pit box, JR Motorsport back there. They just did a brake change on the only BMW M6 to prepare it already for the race, which shouldn't be too much of a disadvantage because there is plenty of time left in qualifying, and of course quite a bit of space on the circuit, 4.3 kilometers shared by just 16 cars. Over there is the Vortex garage. That car was brought into the pits just after the end of free practice. It was not a big problem, it just ran out of fuel, so that's it. Another fuel load, and now it's back on track for qualifying as well.
Thank you, Lucas. And maybe when we come to you next time, or indeed now, you can update us with the fueling situation at the Hungaroring, because typically with Creventic, fueling is not done outside the garages. That's two-pronged, partly because it's easier from a logistical point of view rather than having to put fueling outlets at every single garage. There is a separate fueling area, but also from a safety perspective as well, it means that not everyone in the pits has to be in fireproof overalls. In fact, nobody does. But I'm interested in whether the fueling is at the start or the end of the pit lane, and how easy or difficult it is to navigate into that quadrant to get there. It's normally a speed limit of 20 kilometres per hour to head around the area dedicated to fuel for the weekend. As the GR Motorsport BMW heads into the second sequence of corners, so there's a hairpin right to start the lap, and then you head effectively doubling back towards the paddock before then a very slow left-hander followed by the right-hand kink. And there are areas around this track that you can get up to quite high speed. But, I mean, this track was described to me a few years ago, Snowy, as almost being like Monaco without the walls, in that it's one racing line and it can be very tricky to overtake.
Yeah, I think a little less so with the GT cars, and I think they'll have a bit more of an opportunity to do it. Just spotting the fastest car at the moment, one of the Gosners. It's going to be, of course, there's three of them, Thomas, David, Corinna. It's David at the wheel at the moment. It's taken the MP Racing Mercedes GT3 to the top of the times, a 146.3, the best that he did in free practice was 145.9, so just outside of that. But current, I guess that's provisional pole position, really, isn't it? I think we will see overtaking. We've got TCR and GT3 cars mixed on track, 16 entries, as we say. There's going to have to be opportunities for it, but it is pretty well aligned. But these cars are a little less aero dependent than their F1 counterparts, if you like.
Yes.
So they are stuck to a line there a little bit more. So it is. I think it's a good description, Monaco, without the walls and without the cafes and the yachts.
Well,
and
true.
All the other benefits and bonuses that go with Monaco. Not putting Hungary down, but it is slightly different.
Maybe a few less billionaires as well floating around the place. But
you see what it takes to run a GT3 car these days?
True enough, yes. No, there's still plenty of money around, don't get me wrong. 701 Vortex just heading towards the chicane. No, later on in the lap, still getting my bearings in all honesty, but 30 minutes of this session to be taking place. We've had just over 12 minutes of it already, and we're going to go back to Lucas, maybe with an update on how the fuel is done this weekend.
Yes, here's the explanation of the fuel zone. I've done my pit stop over there, and now I'm going to be running at 40 kilometers per hour, pull in here, and then it's just 20. So much slower on the way to the fuel pump, but that is one of the big differences this time out, because normally it's somewhere in the back of the paddock. Here it's in the middle of the F1 pit lane, so I'm going to stop somewhere here, will be filled up, and then I'm going to start running slowly again with 20 kilometers an hour. Over there is the sign 40 kilometers until the end of the pit lane, and then it's flat out again. So as many different out of breath already. Yeah, as many things here in Hungary, it works a bit different, the refueling thing this time.
Thank you, Lucas. I knew I just needed to request something like that, and he would provide all of the necessary information. Very much appreciated. We've not been racing at this venue with Creventic in the 24H series. I make it for 7 years. The last time it was part of the calendar, it was 2014, and this is actually the 7th edition of the 12 Hours of the Hungaroring, and therefore I assume they were all part of our Creventic Championship, although if the previous one was 2014, I'm not sure whether it's possible to fit them all in the time that we've had a championship existing with Creventic. Remember, the 24 Hours of Dubai in the early days was basically the only event of the year, and then that became a 3-round championship, a 5-round championship, and now we are at a point where there's actually going to be 7 races through the course of the season. 1 in the Middle East to start things off, 5 races in Europe, and then to North America, to Florida, for the final round of the season, which will be race 7. So the 92 Porsche is the Herbert Motorsport entered car for Jürgen Hering, Bobby Gonzalez, Marco Seefried, and Daniel Allemann, interestingly. Now, that's not the lineup I gave you a moment or two ago, so there's obviously been a little bit of a tweak to the drivers for car 92, and that suggests to me that Allemann's going to be on double duty, sometime driving the 91 and sometimes the 92, so they will be having to get their stints exactly right for that. No, I think that was what I gave you at the start. I'd expected maybe an adjustment. I think we've lost Tim Muller, who was originally labelled in that 92 car, so Muller out and Daniel Allemann in. They've just got to make sure at Herbert Motorsport then, Snowy, that when Allemann comes in at the end of one stint, he's not due in the other car right afterwards.
Well, mercifully regulations prevent that, but
yeah.
It would be very tiring, wouldn't it, to get from one car to the other. We do see it quite often, though, with drivers driving more than at the wheel of more than one car in a race, but you do need to have an appropriate gap in between the two. It would help if it's a similar type of car as well. Otherwise, that would be quite interesting.
I wonder whether
Swiss driver there, and of course that car currently just gone to the top of the timesheets, Johnny, with a 1:44.995 by Marco Seefried.
I wonder whether he's just there as more of an insurance policy if Herring, Gonzalez, Seefried find that they can't do a stint for whatever reason, then they've always got Alleman as a backup. I say that because the 91 car only has 3 drivers, so you would have thought the 92 should be able to do it with 3 if they have to.
What a job to have, hey? There's a choice of which Herbert Motorsport Porsche to drive in this the Creventic Barcelona round. They were first and second.
Yeah.
I think they were leading on the first lap, weren't they? 24 hours later, they were leading. Such was there. I use the word metronomic advisedly. It's a little bit of a cliche, but it really was. And the age-old thing with the Porsche, you mentioned about breaking the Porsche stranglehold a little bit earlier, Johnny, but the phrase that they just do what it says on the tin. For those Porsche, they just do. They are metronomic. They do go round. They just keep doing it and just delivering the results. But I think Daniel Alleman, I think you're probably right there. I think he may well just flip between the 2 cars, and I don't think it really matters to him which one he gets to drive. You know, he could actually finish up first and second in the race. Couldn't he?
Yeah.
Cool.
So he would have to straddle the podium. Absolutely.
But let's not predict that now at this stage. We are only in couldn't even in qualifying just yet. So yes.
Yeah, a long way of the weekend still to pan out quite clearly, and you get to the end of 2 hours this evening at 6:30, and then you've got the small challenge of 10 hours of racing tomorrow, and the championship deliberately using as much of the day as possible. You might be asking why the 12 hours can't be squeezed in. Now, I don't know this for certain, but I am assuming it is because that is within the permitted racing hours of this site, so everything has to be done pretty much by 6:30 in the evening. And therefore, and they'll be starting at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
An early start, 8:30 to be out racing on track. I mean, most circuits across the world, normally track activity isn't allowed until 9 o'clock local time, simply because of noise restriction, we call environmental issues now, etc. And there are places in the UK certainly where that's the case, and there's only so many noisy days allowed at a circuit and a venue across a year. So that's exactly why it's difficult to get a 12-hour race or a 24-hour race. People, fans, teams, drivers are all clamouring for it, but it's often just putting the permits in place.
Yeah.
It's not that the organisers don't want to do it, or there isn't a demand for it. It's the physicality. Can you actually do it? Logistics.
Oh, there's a big spin for the 58 Mercedes, which goes around in the GT3 category. That, I think, is at turn 2. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So turn 1 is the hairpin right that kicks the lap off. There's a little kink then, which is definitely a separate corner, but on my track map isn't numbered separately. So 2 is the left-hand almost hairpin, and then there's the right-hand kink with a bike chicane immediately afterwards, but we're not using that this weekend. So 58 is David Gosner, who just goes into turn 2 a little hot, slightly off the racing line, and maybe just out in the dust there, Snowy.
Johnny, I'm not going to contradict you there. I'm going to just offer in a little possibility.
Go
there.
on, you can contradict me. It's
no,
early on in the weekend. I like a bit of controversy.
David Gosner set the original fastest lap in that car a few moments ago. Marcus Seefried then picked that in the Herbert Motorsport Porsche. I wonder if Gosner's gone into the pits. It's one of the other Gosners in the car, and our time screen just hasn't updated yet. I just wonder if that's going out. Cold tyres. We say the phrase cold tyres, cold brain. We don't mean that rudely. It's a connection as in you haven't dialed into the car just quite yet, and it's, as you say there, big left hand, and it just got away from him. Just him, or it could be Corinna, of course. There's Lady Gosner in that car as well. So we'll just see when our screen updates. If it is David, then I'm wrong.
Indeed, yeah.
One thing is guaranteed: it is going to be a Gosner.
Well, that's true. We don't need to necessarily narrow it down in that respect. We haven't seen the MP Racing Mercedes number 58 since Hockenheim, so 2 races ago, but it's a long time ago, back in May, in fact, but they weren't at Barcelona for the 24 hours, as now heading towards the latter portion of the lap, which is uphill, back towards the main straight. The 955 Willy Motorsports by Ebby Motors Porsche. So run by Ebby Motors is heading up the hill. Fabrizio Broggi, Nicolai Sergui George and Sabino De Castro are the drivers in car 955, entered into the 991 class this weekend. So back across the line, that will go, and you can hear the flat 6 in the background. So between turns 14 and 15, pit entry actually before you get to turn 14. So the pit inroad arcs on the very inside of turn 14, and pit lane itself starts with the bays almost as soon as you straighten up. And I'm sure we'll know this if you follow F1, because there was a rather entertaining race around this place only a few weeks ago, as the 101 Red Camel Jordans.nl Audi RS3 LMS DSG, although not in the traditional Red Camel colours. Of course, they have run Cupras in the past, but a departure to the four rings this weekend for Rick Breukers, who's joined by Dad Ivo and brother Luke as well. So we've got all three Breukers in the 101. We've got all three Gosners in the 58 GT3 Mercedes, as then Rick runs a little bit wide coming out of turn 1 and through the kink. You can do that, although, well, officials may be stamping down on track limits, particularly on the exit of a bend, because it means you can carry more speed, of course, through the middle corner. He's kicking up the dust through turn 3 as well. So this is potentially a very good lap for Rick Breukers, unless the stewards cancel it, because he's been off and over the white lines at least a couple of occasions, and he's only now at turn 5.
Quick update on the 58 MP Mercedes that has pitted, so it might well have, I might have to backpedal on this one, Johnny, that it might well have been David Gosling at the wheel of that, just trying to go for a quicker lap and just a little bit of exuberance on the throttle there, getting carried away. That lap time reduced to a 2:07.9. That's how much that time cost him. But I did notice as the car went round when you spotted it, Johnny, that he was very quickly onto the brakes, because there wasn't much of a runoff area at that point, and he didn't really want to go any connecting to the barriers. At this stage of the weekend, it's not ideal. The mechanics they're not going to add you to their Christmas card list for that, are they?
Certainly not. I mean, there is some space if you outbrake yourself into 2. There's a bit of runoff then right in front of you. But if you've done the majority of turn 2 and then you lose the car, as you say, Armco's very close indeed.
That's the difference. So outbraking yourself, you can
get away with it.
You can understeer and just okay, and it's nothing but pride and lap time. It's when the car starts to rotate, it's like, oh, hang on, it's not built for this. And you were saying about track limits, and of course this has changed fundamentally now over the years. We used to have the side of the track a curb, a white line, a curb, and then usually grass, and then barriers. And it used to be in the old days that ask any decent touring car driver what the track limits were, and they'd say the barriers. Everything else was legitimate. You'd lose time, and it was self-policing and self-penalising because friction. You got no grip. You go onto the rough bit. It was happening. Most F1 circuits now have these massive runoffs, and even some of the curbs aren't even a curb, they're just painted.
Yeah.
So you can afford to run over it and take a risk. And that's exactly what you say. Drivers, the mentality of drivers is, they will try and gain every advantage. What's interesting here at the Hungaroring is it's a mixture of both. It is an F1 licensed circuit, as you said, the great Grand Prix here just a few weeks ago. But a lot of it, you do have some of these runoffs, sort of turn 3, the right-hander drop down the hill. So you've got our first bit there, we saw the MP Mercedes go round. The fast right-hander after that, there's a big run-off to the left-hand side. And again at turn 4, at the top of the hill, there's a run-off to the right. Then it changes, all of a sudden you've got grass. And it's back to almost like old school, if you like. So it's one of those strange circuits where it mixes as you go around. So you've got to remember, should you be inclined as a driver to possibly take advantage of a corner like that, which none would, of course, we know, we're just talking hypothetically. Can I remember which corners that you might want to not do that at, if you know what I mean?
I do, indeed. Yes, and you've got to be on top of that all the way around the lap. Some good times coming in now, including for Alfred Renauer, who's just set a personal best. That's 8 thousandths of a second slower than Marco Seefried in the 92. So it's a Herbert 1-2 separated by 0.008 of a second. There's also a new time at the top of TCE. Emil Heyerdahl in car number 1 has just done a 1:54.995 for Outer Rama Motorsport. As we get this update again from Lucas.
Yeah, as you just mentioned, the Herbert Porsche number 91, it just went past the MP Mercedes, as I'm seeing on the timing screen behind me. But I think there is still a very, very happy David Gosner, who just got out of the Mercedes, and you look very happy indeed, David.
Yeah, it was not so bad for me. I was really, really, really lucky. and I try to give my best. And the Mercedes, nice car.
And didn't you expect to be in P2 in the end? Because I saw you proudly taking pictures of the timing screen afterwards.
I'm expect, yeah. I'm expect.
Okay. And do you think we'll now stay in P3 with the Tour Herbert Porsche in front of you?
No, we go to first.
All right. Do you actually go out again? You won't.
Today, no. Today I lost drive my father.
Right. David, thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you.
That's David Gosner, who is a former Ferrari European champion in the Shell division. Took that 2013, so just a year before we were last racing at this track, in fact, with this championship. So he has had a number of seasons in the Ferrari Challenge, the European Challenge. Of course, there's a North America and an Asian championship as well. But first races in this particular series last year with MP Racing, the family crew. They hail from Bolzano in Italy, and David is 34, bronze rated by the FIA, but done quite a lot of GT racing, namely in Ferraris, but of course they have a Mercedes these days, the 58 car, as out of at the lower portion of the track at turn 5 goes the number 500 Audi, and great to have the Evo 2 back again, which is the car collection motorsport machine. So exciting to see how this car gets on across the weekend after it debuted in Barcelona last month, Snowy.
Yeah, and this is the car that we had all the sort of Wingate conversations about, didn't we, in Barcelona? The comparison to the wing and how very, very different it is. And it wasn't not just being anoraks. There's a certain element of that, of course, but it was quite legitimate as, and it's very, very different. The wings, it's got a reverse swan neck set of struts on it, where this wing sits much further forward than it does on the ordinary Audi R8, and obviously an evolution, no pun intended, because it is called the Evo 2, the car, but literally an aerodynamic evolution of the thinking and how these things evolve. And these technicians and engineers, they never stop. There's always things going on in wind tunnels and trying to find every little bit all the time. And what's accepted practice today might not be in 2 races' time, never mind next season.
So Nathaniel Berton will be part of the lineup in this number 500 car. He's going to be joined by Martin Lechman and Martin Rump, who is the 25-year-old Estonian who is racing mainly in the GT World Challenge Championship this year. Had a complete break from racing last year, presumably enforced by the pandemic, but good to have him taking part, I think, in his first ever 24H Series meeting. And at the moment, the 500 car is being driven by Nathaniel Berton, Frenchman, allocated in the P4 category, but there are no other cars in P4. That just means that prior to its homologation, full homologation next year, it's given a separate class. But we will see how it gets on against other GT3 machinery. It will have been given a hand of balance performance, though, that should mean that it isn't capable of winning the race. A bit more weight, maybe the turbo. No, because there's not a turbo on that car, is there? But the restrictor may be slightly narrower as well, so that it can't get a race win. Although it is a very strong driver lineup, so it's going to be interesting with a smallish entry this weekend as to what it might get up to.
Well, you say that, Johnny, that's the principle, but of course these things never work out quite that way. Last weekend you and I covered the NLS 8 round, where the Aston Martin GT3 debuted, and of course that was in the equivalent category in NLS SPX, as in unhomologated cars. Shouldn't go out there and win it, of course they'll then balance performance it. And of course it had a very strong lineup of Nicky Thiem and Maxime Martin, and it went and won it. So, you know, the thing you don't want to as a manufacturer, in actual fact, really, is to come out and just banzai the field with your new car, because yeah, it's great for that one day, but then obviously the organisers just go, well, okay, balance the performance the heck out of that and knock it all back, and it's not the car that then customers go and buy. So in some ways you don't want to give it too much of a performance, and in some ways there, perhaps with BMW were pretty similar last weekend with the new M4 in that same NLS round. Nice solid 5th. It's well inside the top 10, it's off the podium, it's just, you know, you said to me after at the end of the day of that race when the Atten won it, what do you add to that now? What do you do? Do you do the second race? Do you do the last one of the year? And like you said, no, just form an orderly queue here.
Yeah.
You need customers starting to buy it now.
Leave on a high.
Yeah.
And the memory is...
Always leave them wanting.
Precisely, yeah. They've done what they set out to do, drum up a huge amount of interest ahead of next season in the NLS. And Herbert Motorsport, in a similar vein, really taking charge of this session, because Marco Seefried's gone through again to set another best lap. And he is 0.786 of a second clear now with a 144.217. Could be about to improve again, although no, he's crossed the line now to receive the checkered flag, because that 30 minutes has really gone through so quickly. We had obviously plenty to talk about during the session, but I can't quite believe that half an hour has disappeared there. A tap on the nose of the number 92 car then that outpaces the 91. Remember, with no Robert Renauer in the 91 this weekend. I wonder how much of an impact that will have compared to the sister car at Herbert Motorsport. But they are confirmed as locking out the front row in the GT series. Alfred Renauer pitted earlier than Marco. And Marco, as I say, did a 36.7 through the first sector on his in-lap, which was actually better than he managed all session. Alfred Renauer then and Ralph Bone, Daniel Alleman will join the 92 car on the front row a little later on for the 4:30 start local. David Gosner, who we heard from in the session, will start from third position in car 58 with Thomas, his dad, and Karina, his sister, the three Gosners, taking charge of the 58 car this weekend. It'll be CP Racing and the two Charleses, Charles Espenlaub, Charlie Putman in the 85 car, to start from fourth position ahead of Nat Berton, who fairly late on in the session was able to move from one side of the grid to the other, so therefore leapfrogging the JR Motorsport BMW M6 to go fifth. And Baz Schouten still heading around. In fact, he's gone back out, interestingly, after the checkered flag. I hope there's no penalty for that. The BMW M6 shown on my screen as currently doing an outlap. RD Science Racing Team, who have a Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo in the GTX category, have qualified in 7th place in the GT series ahead of the 991 entered Willy Motorsports by Ebby Motors Porsche 911. That's a Gen 2 Cup car. Michael Doppelmayr in the Audi R8 LMS GT3 qualifying in 9th position ahead of Gilles Courtois. And then in the TCE series, Emil Heyerdahl gets pole position for Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing in their VW Golf. Rick Breukers not very far away, just 0.352 of a second slower in the Audi RS3 LMS DSG, and the same car for AC Motorsport qualifying in third position after a lap from Mathieu Detry, and Jasmine Pressig in the 112 car finishing in fourth spot. So confirmation of the GT positions, these fairly provisional at this stage, and will be made certain, of course, ahead of our start time of 4:30 for the first 2 hours. But Herbert, very dominant indeed, and Daniel Alleman looks to be on to already potentially a winner this weekend, because he's not only allocated in the first car, but he's also got potentially the backup seat in the second car as well. Or the other way around, actually, and it remains to be seen whether the Swiss will appear in the 92. But he's got a strong footing, whichever way he goes.
Talk about covering all your bases. Yeah, exactly. Literally, he's got a seat in the two front-running cars, the front row cars. Way of doing it. Samantha Tan there didn't finish. I noticed that the 438 GT4, it's the ST Racing, isn't it? An M4 GT4, isn't it? I think it is.
Yes.
I did see that going around a little bit slower, and her best lap time was a 6:08, so she's slightly out there. She brings up the rear in terms of the field there, the Canadian Samantha Tan in that car. But I'm not sure what the problem with that car is. I'm sure that will be out. It will be a starter. I am very intrigued also, as you say, at Baz Schouten on an outlap. According to I can't believe that's correct. I can't believe a team would send somebody out on an outlap when the checkered flag's gone out already.
There may be news to follow on that.
I think it's a technical misnomer on the screen, shall we say.
Autorama Motorsport by Wolf Power Racing, another pole for the season, and Emil Heyerdahl, the man to set it, from Rick Breukers, who was trying everything he could in a new car, the Red Camel Jordans.NL, new car for him, the RS3 LMS DSG. Similar car for the Belgian squad, AC Motorsport. Just a two-driver lineup there for Mathieu Detry and Stefan Perrat, ahead of the other Autorama Motorsport Golf car 112. And Munkhoff Racing setting a 156.3, and that was set by Marco Poland. Lukas Gajewski has all the reaction following a cut and thrust 30-minute qualifying session.
With your pole setter Marco Seefried in the number 92 Porsche, that's pole position. And Marco, you absolutely smashed this session with the overall best in the beginning, and then you actually improved later on.
Yeah, at the beginning, my teammate Jürgen, he started the session on used ones, and the team said, I shall go also on the used one as well to get a feel for the car, because we did some brake betting before, and then they have always a high initial bite, and therefore we took chances, and I went for it, and then they gave me some stickers, and yeah, then it was just one thing. I was a bit nervous to get a clear lap at the time when the peak is there. So once I run into traffic, then I slow down a bit to keep the tire at the sweet point, but then at the end it worked out and it was fine.
Shall we make some space for you guys to bring the car back in? I think they are waiting for us to be done with the interview. But of course, we have a couple of more questions. For example, your driver lineup. I understand Tim Müller is out of it, and now you have one driver doing both, or doing the race on both cars?
Yeah, we have the machine now on our car called Daniel Alemann. So he said, okay, you guys, you are in trouble. And as Herbert is really team spirit, he said he tries to share, and we are convinced that he can manage because he's driving from the early morning until the sun comes down. So he's the one we need. And yeah, we are happy that we can take this chance or this opportunity to have a nice, clear race.
So to make it clear, he's not focusing on one car, and it's the reserve for the second car. He's doing both of them.
He's doing both of them. He's a petrol head, a real maniac, so he's going for it.
That's a great spirit. And why is Tim not with you this time?
Honestly, I don't know. I just heard yesterday night some private issues. I didn't want to ask. It seemed there's some trouble, and we have to accept this. And we are not mad about him, because if something happens, then you gotta go, and that's what he did. And we try to recover this somehow, and it looks like with Dani we can do it.
And there is only a very short time now until the start of the race. How does the preparation look like in the next few minutes?
Seriously, now our starting lineup was very much pending on the qualifying result. I think Jürgen is starting, but since you took me right out of the pit garage, I do not know who is finishing today's race. Probably then Taki or Dani. I think they want to reserve my time for tomorrow's for the big part. But maybe there were some changes. I have no idea, to be fair.
Okay, so I'll let you sort that out, and I'll keep all the strategy questions for the grid later on. Thank you very much, Marco Seefried.
Thank you. Have a good one. See you, Ben.
Yeah, that's a very, very strong hint there from Marco Seefried that Lukas was pulling him out of the driver briefing. So we're most grateful for Marco for spending the time. That's the second pole position of the season, by the way, because although everyone remembers GPX Racing taking victory at Dubai in January, it was actually the 92 car, although with a different driver lineup that included Sven Müller and Klaas Bachler, who took pole position at the Dubai Autodrome all those many months ago. So that draws to a close our coverage of qualifying for the 2021 running of the Hankook 12 Hours of Hungaroring. Part one of the race is due to start at 4:30, but we will be live with all the build-up Central European Summertime at 4 o'clock local. And if you head to radio-show.co.uk and have a look at the schedule at the bottom of that page for RS1, then wherever you are around the world, that website will do all the calculations for you. But basically, it is in 37 minutes' time. We will be live again for the build-up for 2 hours of the 12 hours, because it's a massive day of racing tomorrow, remember, starting at 8:30 local all the way through till 6:30. Who can finish on the lead lap, though, later on tonight? You'll have to rejoin us to find out. My thanks to Lukas Gajewski in the pits, to Peter Snowden as well. From Johnny Palmer, we will see you very shortly.
One championship, 8 races, legendary circuits, drivers from all over the world, one family, one passion, endurance racing. Welcome to the most professional endurance racing series for all drivers, amateurs, semi-professional and professional. Welcome to the 24-hour series powered by Hankook. you beat the challenge of 8 endurance races? Will you become the 24-hour series champion for 2021? This is endurance.